Imagine stepping through a veil of time, where the streets are lined with tightly packed wooden buildings, the air heavy with the scent of incense, soy, and the distant smoke of cooking fires. You are no longer in the comfort of your modern world, but in Imperial China, a civilization both vast and intricate, where even the simplest misstep can set the tone for a day or a lifetime. If you thought surviving your morning commute was stressful, here, you would quickly realize that survival itself takes on a new meaning. The moment you appear, the throngs of people around you move with a rhythm shaped by centuries of etiquette and hierarchy. You are immediately aware of how the very ground beneath your feet is a map of social order. Merchants bow low to officials passing by, and children scurry out of the way of the elegantly dressed scholar, whose robes whisper against the cobblestones. Every gesture, every glance carries meaning, and to ignore these signals would be to mark yourself as an outsider, perhaps someone to be corrected. Or worse, someone to be avoided entirely. Your stomach rumbles, and you wander toward the marketplace, where the world's most unusual smells converge in a way that would challenge even the strongest constitution. Piles of dried fish lie next to baskets of steaming buns, while vendors shout prices and anecdotes over the clamor. You reach for a fruit unfamiliar and sticky with dew, only to feel the eyes of the vendor sizing you up, calculating whether you are worthy of trust or ripe for deception. In Imperial China, even such a mundane choice as what to eat could be a delicate negotiation, one misstep revealing your ignorance and inviting ridicule. As the sun climbs higher, you are drawn toward the canals that thread through the city. The water moves sluggishly, carrying the remnants of daily life, scraps of paper, fragments of straw, and the occasional unidentifiable floating object. Boats sway gently, piloted by men whose skill has been honed over decades. One wrong miscalculation, one misjudged tug on a rope, and you could end up in the cold water, losing not just your balance but the respect of onlookers who treat clumsiness as a moral failing. Here, even water is not forgiven. Walking past the imperial gardens, you see the palace walls rise like a mountain of carved stone. Guards, with their iron helmets reflecting the sun, move with silent precision. You instinctively keep your head low, but that is not enough. You have already committed a subtle infraction by standing in the shadow of a passing official too long. And you feel the weight of invisible eyes upon you, assessing, judging, cataloging your every action. A single nod, a single gesture too slow or too fast, could brand you as disrespectful. Here, time itself seems regimented, and your natural instincts betray you at every turn. By midday, you realize that Imperial China is a place where knowledge is power, and ignorance can be fatal in the smallest ways. You attempt to converse with a scholar in the market, hoping to learn a few words, but the language is not just foreign, it is layered with codes and connotations shaped by centuries. You fumble your phrases, and the scholar's gaze sharpens, a silent admonishment that spreads through your consciousness like ice. Every word you speak carries weight, and even your hesitation becomes a story told about you in whispers among those who truly understand the world you have stepped into. You think perhaps to find comfort in the quiet temples tucked away behind flowering trees. But the monks there, serene as they appear, observe the flow of life with a patience and discernment you cannot hope to match. You bow incorrectly, your shoulders tense, your hands awkward. Though no one speaks, the imbalance you have introduced into their ordered sanctuary is palpable. In Imperial China, even stillness has rules. Even silence has structure. To break them is to announce your inadequacy. The day stretches on, and you are drawn into the intricacies of life here, the precise rituals of tea-making, the delicate balance of cooking over firewood, the precise way to arrange your shoes before entering a home. Each task seems simple at first glance, but you feel the weight of centuries pressing down, demanding perfection. The bowls you attempt to carry wobble. The tea you pour spills slightly, a tiny ripple that feels like a moral failing. You realize that in this world, even the minutiae of daily life carries the gravity of destiny. By afternoon, your senses are dulled but alert, your body weary from constant vigilance. You watch as a carriage rolls past, drawn by horses so perfectly trained they respond to commands you cannot even see. The guards ride alongside, their spears catching the light, their horses' hooves echoing like a drumbeat of authority. You imagine trying to navigate these streets for an entire lifetime and shiver. To last a single day here seems a monumental challenge. To last a lifetime would require mastering not just survival, but the invisible language of respect, timing, and instinct. As the sun dips toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the tiled roofs, you reflect on the subtle but relentless pressures of imperial life. Each citizen moves with purpose, honed by tradition, expectation, and law. Even in leisure, the weight of responsibility is tangible. Games, music, and dance all follow patterns perfected over generations. You attempt a simple game with some local children, only to find yourself fumbling the rules, your clumsy movements drawing gentle but pointed laughter. It is not cruel. It is a reminder that mastery here is a lifelong endeavor, and the uninitiated will always stumble. Evening brings a quiet sense of unease. Lamps are lit, their soft glow casting dancing shadows on the walls. The air cools, and you think you might find rest, but the day has left you raw with the constant requirement to observe, imitate, and survive. The streets grow quieter, yet the sense of vigilance does not fade. Even in darkness, Imperial China is a world alive with structure and consequence. One misstep in the night, a misjudged route home, a moment of inattentiveness, could undo all the small triumphs of the day. And so, as you finally collapse onto a straw mat in a modest inn, you feel the full weight of the truth. Surviving a day in Imperial China is a delicate dance between knowledge and instinct, humility and courage. Your modern assumptions, your casual confidence, your lack of centuries of ingrained etiquette, all of it conspires to make you painfully aware of your fragility. Here, in this vast and storied empire, life is a constant negotiation, and lasting even a single day requires more than skill. It requires becoming something new, something disciplined, something in tune with a rhythm older than your own lifetime. You close your eyes, imagining the sunrise, the bustling markets, the whispering canals. Tomorrow you think you might try again. But tonight, the empire has already claimed you, not with cruelty, but with its unyielding expectation of mastery. And you drift into sleep, a sleep that is uneasy but full of the echoes of a world so structured, so precise, and so infinitely demanding, that to live here is to dance on the edge of history itself. Morning arrives with a gentle haze, the mist curling over rooftops and drifting lazily along the narrow alleys. You awaken to the faint smell of steamed buns being prepared, mixed with the distant tang of river water. Rising stiffly, you realize that even the simplest act standing without causing imbalance requires attention. Imperial China does not forgive inattention. The moment your feet touch the uneven cobblestones outside, your senses are assaulted with the rhythm of life, the clatter of wooden carts, the distant chatter of vendors, the whistle of a boatman guiding his vessel through the canal, and the occasional sharp bark of a dog asserting dominion over its territory. As you wander toward the outer markets, you notice the intricate layers of commerce. There is more here than the simple exchange of goods. Every transaction carries a hidden dance of reputation, social connection, and subtle deception. A fruit vendor eyes you warily, noting your hesitation. You pick up an orange, rolling it between your fingers, and immediately feel the invisible weight of judgment. Are you a foreigner? Are you Nalthi? Are you naive? A single miscalculation could invite mockery, or worse, a subtle attempt to cheat you. You hand over your coins, noting the precise way he counts them, and realize that even the simplest act of payment has its own language. You have already begun learning, but the lesson is unrelenting, demanding absolute attention. Moving further into the city, you encounter a group of craftsmen shaping bronze and wood, their hands moving with practiced precision. You watch fascinated, and try to mimic a simple motion with a mallet. The sound of metal striking metal reverberates in the air, and your unsteady blow produces a jarring clang that draws a brief, almost imperceptible frown from the master craftsman. You feel the sharp sting of inadequacy, not from malice, but from the natural order of this society, where every task is honed over decades, and a lifetime of experience cannot be replaced by curiosity alone. To last a day here is to respect skill, even when it exposes your own limitations. By midday, hunger drives you toward a small tea house tucked between a pair of larger buildings. The interior is dim, illuminated by lanterns that flicker with a soft, warm glow. The proprietor greets you with a measured nod, his eyes assessing whether you understand the unspoken etiquette. You attempt a polite bow, your shoulders stiff, and notice the slightest twitch of his lips' approval, perhaps, or bemusement. You order tea, trying to memorize the precise tones and gestures required. When it arrives, you realize that even drinking is an art, To lift the cup too quickly or too slowly, to slurp or sip incorrectly, can transform a moment of nourishment into a subtle embarrassment. You drink slowly, deliberately, trying to absorb the rhythm of the room, the quiet ebb and flow of respect and tradition that surrounds you. Stepping back into the streets, the sun high in the sky, you are confronted with the sheer scale of the city. Merchants line the avenues with stalls stacked high with silks, ceramics, and spices. Children dart between feet, laughing and squealing, their presence a constant reminder that movement here is unpredictable. A stray dog crosses your path, and you realize the simple act of walking requires calculation, a constant anticipation of what might come next. Here, survival is not merely physical, it is social, mental, and emotional. Every glance, every gesture carries weight. You begin to feel exhausted, not from labor, but from the endless demand for attention, the constant need to decipher unspoken rules. As the afternoon stretches, you are drawn toward the outskirts of the city, where the walls rise like mountains and the countryside begins to stretch beyond. Here, the pace slows slightly, but danger increases. Merchants traveling with carts full of goods speak of bandits and wild animals, their stories filled with caution and grim humor. You imagine trying to navigate these roads alone, without the protection of the city's disciplined watchmen, and shiver. Even a single day outside the city walls requires knowledge of terrain, timing, and diplomacy, for travelers are constantly at the mercy of those who understand the land better than you ever could. You pause by a riverbank, watching a fisherman cast his nets with effortless grace. He moves as though the river itself is an extension of his body. You attempt to mimic him, your movements clumsy and jerky. The net tangles, falling into the water with a wet, angry splash. The fisherman glances at you briefly, a silent acknowledgement of your failure, then returns to his work. In Imperial China, mastery is revered, failure is tolerated only as a lesson, and humility is the shield that allows one to continue learning without shame. You sit by the river, your hands wet and your body aching, understanding the subtle truth. Here to survive even a single day is to recognize your own limitations constantly and to bow to the skill of those who have mastered the world around you. Evening brings new challenges. Lanterns are lit along the streets, casting golden pools of light that dance upon the tiled rooftops. You follow the sound of music to a small courtyard where dancers move in fluid patterns, their robes flowing like water. You attempt to join, unsure of the correct posture or rhythm. Your movements are awkward, your timing off, drawing soft giggles from the crowd. But there is no cruelty, only an implicit teaching. Life in Imperial China is an ongoing lesson, and those willing to observe, to mimic, to learn are slowly shaped by it. You begin to feel the subtle rhythm of the place, the way tradition and discipline guide movement, thought, and behavior like an invisible hand. As night deepens, the city quiets but does not sleep. The canals reflect the moonlight, a mirror for the lanterns that still glow in private courtyards. You make your way back to your inn, noticing details you had missed in daylight. The careful placement of tiles, the carvings on door frames, the small offerings left at shrines. Every corner of life is filled with meaning, and the tiniest misstep can ripple outward, affecting not just your day, but how you are perceived for weeks, months, perhaps even years. Collapsing onto your mat once more, you realize that surviving a day here is not a matter of strength alone. It is patience, humility, observation, and adaptation. Imperial China is vast, complex, and beautiful. But it is also unforgiving, and the empire's invisible rules are more exacting than any law you have ever known. You close your eyes, letting the sound of the night wash over you, the distant murmur of the canal, the whisper of wind through papered windows, the soft padding of feet moving through alleys. Each sound is a reminder of a world that has existed for centuries, one that you are only beginning to understand. And as sleep embraces you, it carries the lessons of the day. Mastery is a journey, vigilance is constant, and to truly last here, one must surrender to the rhythm of a world far older and wiser than oneself. Dawn comes again, painting the rooftops with a soft amber light. The city seems quieter, yet the rhythm of life persists. You rise slowly, muscles stiff from yesterday's lessons, and step outside, instantly aware of how delicate every movement must be. Even the morning breeze carries lessons. The way it rustles the silk banners above the gates, the direction it bends the thin bamboo stalks, the subtle scent it carries from the river, and the incense burning in distant temples. Here, nothing is accidental. Everything is noticed and every detail has meaning. Today, curiosity draws you toward the imperial palace. The walls rise impossibly high, the stones smooth and imposing, the gates guarded by soldiers whose armor glints like the surface of a still pond in sunlight. You approach carefully, feeling the weight of centuries of authority pressing down. Within the gates, courtiers glide across polished floors, their robes a symphony of color and pattern. Each step is precise, each gesture deliberate. You attempt to follow the flow, but your unpracticed movements betray you. A foot lands too heavily. A hand gestures incorrectly. You feel the subtle weight of judgment, not from hostility, but from the natural law of this place. Only those who move with knowledge, respect, and awareness may navigate these halls successfully. Inside, the emperor's presence is both literal and invisible. You never see him immediately, but you feel his influence in every bow, every whisper, every carefully folded fan. Courtiers pass, their eyes measuring your posture, your gaze, your timing. You realize that even breathing requires subtle attention. A hurried inhale, a misplaced glance, or a careless step could mark you as foolish or disrespectful. Imperial China is a land where authority is woven into the air itself, where tradition and hierarchy are felt long before they are seen. Your attention is drawn to a festival taking place in a nearby square. Lanterns of red and gold sway in the morning breeze, intricate paper dragons twist above, and musicians play flutes and drums that pulse through the heart of the city. You attempt to join the crowd, only to find that every action, clapping, bowing, moving to the rhythm, requires knowledge you do not possess. The locals move with grace, performing centuries-old rituals that you can barely follow. To last here is to understand the layers of culture that are invisible to outsiders. A bow at the right moment, a clap that is neither too loud nor too soft, a smile that carries humility but not mockery. One misstep, no matter how small, is immediately apparent, marking you as a visitor, a novice, someone vulnerable. By afternoon, hunger drives you toward a side street where a small food stall offers steaming dumplings. You observe how the vendor handles the dough, pinching it just so, placing each piece with care. When you try to imitate, your hands are clumsy. The dumplings collapse, spilling filling onto your fingers. The vendor gives a brief smile, a hint of amusement, and corrects your movements with subtle gestures. Here, even something as ordinary as eating requires attention, precision, and respect for tradition. Each action is a lesson, and each lesson is delivered without judgment, but without mercy for carelessness. The streets themselves present constant challenges. In one narrow alley, you nearly collide with a cart drawn by 2 oxen. The driver, a weathered man with eyes sharp as blades, barely spares you a glance, but the subtle shift of his body reminds you that space is a commodity, and awareness is survival. In another moment, a group of children darts between your legs, laughing and chasing a stray chicken. You step awkwardly, catching yourself just in time, but the incident leaves your heart racing. Imperial China is alive, a living organism in which every movement is connected, and missteps are not merely embarrassing, they are potentially dangerous. By evening, you find yourself near the city gates, where guards patrol with a meticulous rhythm. You watch as they exchange subtle signals, a nod here, a step there, a hand resting lightly on a weapon that is never drawn unnecessarily. Their discipline is silent but absolute. You realize that even outside the palace walls, the empire is present, and to navigate its streets safely, you must adopt its rhythms, its vigilance, its unspoken rules. Nightfall brings an eerie calm. Lanterns glow softly, reflecting on the canals and casting shadows that seem to move with a mind of their own. You follow a quiet path along the water, trying to understand the subtle etiquette of moving unseen, unnoticed, but with respect. In the darkness, you glimpse a fisherman tending his nets, a scholar studying calligraphy under candlelight, a servant arranging offerings at a shrine. Every action is deliberate, every movement precise, and you feel acutely your own awkwardness, your own inability to match centuries of ingrained practice. As sleep nears, you recall the day's lessons, how the marketplace demanded vigilance, how the palace required awareness, how the streets punished carelessness, and how even the smallest gestures carried enormous weight. Imperial China is a civilization where every moment, from dawn to dusk, tests your patience, humility, and adaptability. To last even a single day here is an accomplishment, and you drift into a deep, contemplative sleep, carried by the rhythm of a world that is at once beautiful, complex, and relentless. Morning breaks with a gentle haze, the mist curling along the riverbanks, softening the sharp edges of rooftops and alleyways. You rise once more, your body still sore from the prior day's lessons, yet curiosity drives you forward. Today, you decide to witness the famed imperial examinations, a trial that can elevate a commoner to the heights of bureaucracy or crush them utterly. Even standing near the examination hall, you feel the electric tension in the air. Students in flowing robes pace nervously, their scrolls clutched tightly, their ink-stained fingers trembling with anticipation. You realize at once that knowledge alone is not enough. Mastery of etiquette, patience, and precise timing is required to survive here. One misstep, a pause too long, a glance misplaced could brand a scholar as unworthy. A failure destined to be whispered about for years. Inside the hall, the scent of ink and paper is thick, almost suffocating. Officials move silently, their eyes scanning each examinee, noting posture, comportment, even breathing. You attempt to observe, but your modern instincts betray you. You shift too suddenly. Your eyes wander too freely, and you feel the subtle weight of judgment descend upon you. The world of Imperial China is precise, unforgiving, and elegantly cruel. Survival requires the ability to move, speak, and act, as though every motion is deliberate, even when it is instinctual. Stepping back into the streets, you decide to explore the outskirts where farmers toil under the relentless sun. Their hands are calloused, their movements economical, each motion honed over years of repetition. You attempt to help, lifting a bundle of rice stalks, but your awkward grip sends part of the load tumbling. The farmer gives a patient, yet firm, correction, showing you the exact angles of the hands, the rhythm of bending and lifting. Here, even labor is ritualized. Strength alone will not suffice. Knowledge, patience, humility, these are your only allies. You leave the field with bruised hands and aching shoulders, but a subtle understanding grows. Survival demands constant learning, constant adaptation. By midday, you are drawn toward a small village near the forested hills outside the city. The local magistrate is known for his strict enforcement of law, and you quickly learn why. Even minor infractions, stepping on a garden border, speaking without a proper greeting, failing to remove your shoes in the temple can result in immediate correction or public humiliation. You accidentally misplace your hat while bowing to an official and feel the sharp sting of a rebuke, though mild, that resonates deeper than mere words. Imperial China is not cruel in the modern sense. It is structured, exacting, and demanding. To last here is to internalize centuries of subtle rules, a lifetime of learned respect, and the unspoken power of observation. The forested hills hold their own dangers. Traveling paths lined with bamboo and pine, you must be alert for snakes, wild boars, and the occasional bandit preying on unwary travelers. A sudden rustle of leaves freezes you in place. The flick of a tail, a glint of sunlight on metal, alerts you that vigilance is never optional. Even the quiet of nature carries lessons. The rhythm of the wind through trees, the movement of birds, the flow of the river all offer clues that can mean the difference between safety and calamity. You move slowly, deliberately, imagining that even a single day here is a test of instincts honed by centuries, while yours are raw, unpracticed, and prone to error. By late afternoon, you stumble upon a military training ground where young soldiers practice drills with spears and bows. The clatter of weapons against armor echoes like distant thunder. You attempt to mimic the stance of a soldier, but your balance falters, your timing is off, and the drill master's sharp glance reminds you instantly of your inadequacy. These men have trained since childhood. Every movement is muscle memory, every gesture steeped in discipline and history. Even casual observers can feel the weight of their skill. You realize that to last a single day in this empire, physical strength alone is useless. You must possess awareness, discipline, and adaptability that comes only from long experience. As evening approaches, you are drawn to a temple hidden deep in the hills, a place of quiet reverence and strange rituals. The monks move like shadows, chanting in tones that seem to vibrate with the earth itself. You attempt to follow their movements, bowing, sitting, kneeling, but your timing is off. The soft correction of a monk's hand on your shoulder is gentle, yet it imprints a profound lesson. Even spirituality here is governed by unbroken rules. Every action, no matter how private or humble, carries meaning. Failure to adhere is not punished with cruelty, but with the subtle, undeniable weight of disharmony. Night falls, and you make your way back to the city. The streets are calm now, but the lessons of the day resonate in every shadow. Lanterns illuminate carvings and inscriptions on doorways, their meaning lost to you, yet hinting at rules and histories embedded in the very architecture. You notice a small shrine in a courtyard, left with offerings of rice and incense. The placement is precise. Even the smallest deviation would be noticed by those who know. Imperial China thrives on detail, vigilance, and centuries of codified behavior. To last a day here is to absorb lessons constantly, to watch, to learn, and to move with deliberate care. Collapsing onto your straw mat once again, exhaustion washes over you. The muscles ache, the mind spins from endless observation and adaptation, yet there is also a profound sense of awe. You have glimpsed only fragments of life in this vast empire, the courtiers, the scholars, the farmers, the soldiers, the monks, but already it has reshaped the way you perceive movement, attention, and survival. Imperial China is not merely a place. It is a living organism of rules, rituals, and rhythms that demands respect, vigilance, and humility. And as sleep carries you into its gentle embrace, you understand why even one day here is a trial, why the unprepared cannot last, and why the empire's lessons are woven into the very air, the ground, and the currents of its rivers. The quiet hours before dawn slip past like a slow-moving river, and when you wake again, the city is already stirring, breathing, stretching its many limbs of alleys, courtyards, canals, and rooftops. A rooster cries somewhere beyond the walls of the inn, and the sound carries through thin wooden panels, mingling with the gentle tapping of footsteps in the street. You rise, careful not to disturb anything in the room, because even here, alone, you have learned that carelessness has a way of echoing outward. In Imperial China, even solitude feels observed, as though the walls themselves are listening for signs of disorder. Outside, a thin fog hugs the ground, curling around your ankles as you walk. Shopkeepers lift their shutters with practiced ease, their movements smooth and economical. A woman sweeps dust from her doorway, each stroke of the broom measured and deliberate, as if she is not just cleaning but performing a ritual that keeps chaos at bay. You pause to watch, and for a moment you try to copy her rhythm, slow and steady, but your movements feel heavy and uneven. Even something as simple as sweeping carries generations of subtle refinement. You drift toward the market again, but today it feels different. The air is thick with anticipation, and people move with a quiet urgency. You overhear whispers of a tax inspector arriving from the capital, a man whose reputation for strictness is known even in distant villages. Merchants adjust their stalls, smoothing fabrics, aligning baskets, making sure that every coin is in its proper place. You realize that survival here is not only about daily routines but about constant readiness for authority. The empire is vast, but its reach extends everywhere, invisible and yet undeniable. A sudden commotion ripples through the street as a small group of officials passes by, their robes darker and more formal than those of ordinary citizens. Everyone bows in perfect unison, heads lowered, bodies angled just so. You hesitate for half a heartbeat, then follow, but your timing is slightly off. That tiny delay feels enormous, like a drumbeat out of rhythm. No one says anything, but you feel the weight of a dozen eyes briefly flicker toward you before returning to their proper focus. Here, even half a second can mark you as different. As the officials disappear, life resumes, but the tension lingers like a faint vibration in the air. You continue walking, your senses sharpened. A group of porters passes, carrying a heavy wooden palanquin. Their steps are synchronized, their breathing aligned. You step aside just in time, but your foot brushes against one of the poles, sending a tiny jolt through the structure. One of the porters glances at you, not angry, but alert, as if reminding you that even the smallest touch can disrupt something much larger than yourself. Later in the morning, you find yourself drawn to a narrow street lined with calligraphy shops. Inside one, an elderly man sits at a low table, his brush gliding across paper with effortless grace. You watch as characters bloom into existence, each stroke precise, balanced, and full of quiet power. You try to imagine writing like that, and the thought alone is exhausting. In Imperial China, even the act of writing is a discipline that can take a lifetime to master. A single misplaced stroke can change meaning entirely, just as a single misplaced step can change a life. You step back into the street, feeling the weight of all you do not know pressing down on you. A young boy runs past, nearly colliding with you, and you instinctively reach out to steady him. Your hand barely touches his sleeve, but his mother immediately pulls him away, bowing apologetically. You bow back, flustered, realizing that even kindness must be carefully measured here. Touch, proximity, tone, everything is regulated by invisible rules. By midday, the sun burns away the morning mist, revealing the city in all its layered complexity. Roofs overlap like scales on a dragon's back, canals shimmer between rows of buildings, and distant hills rise beyond the walls, quiet and watchful. You feel small, not just in size but in understanding. Imperial China is not merely a place you can walk through. It is a system you must learn to navigate, and you have only just begun. Hunger draws you toward a food stall where noodles are being prepared in large, steaming pots. The cook moves with lightning-fast precision, tossing noodles, adding spices, ladling broth, all without hesitation. You order a bowl, careful to mimic the polite phrases you have heard others use. When it arrives, you sit on a low stool and begin to eat, but even this simple act is filled with potential missteps. You watch how others hold their chopsticks, how they lift the bowl slightly, how they avoid making noise. You try to follow suit, and though your movements are awkward, no one openly corrects you. Still, you feel the constant pressure of being observed, evaluated, quietly measured against a standard you barely understand. In the afternoon, dark clouds begin to gather, and a heavy, humid stillness settles over the city. People quicken their pace, pulling awnings over their stalls, securing doors and windows. You sense that weather here is not just a background detail. It is another force that shapes life. When the rain finally falls, it does so with sudden intensity, drumming against rooftops and turning streets into shining ribbons of water. You hurry for shelter, nearly slipping on the slick stones, your heart pounding as you catch yourself at the last moment. A fall here would not just be painful. It would be humiliating, a visible sign of your inability to adapt. From beneath an awning, you watch the rain transform the city. Water flows through carved channels into drains along the edges of streets, all guided by careful design. Even the way the city handles rain is the result of centuries of planning. You realize that Imperial China is built on layers upon layers of accumulated knowledge. And stepping into it without that knowledge is like stepping into a river without knowing how to swim. As the storm passes, the air cools and the world feels briefly renewed. You venture out again, following a path that leads toward a small neighborhood temple. Incense smoke drifts from its doorway, and inside a few people kneel in quiet prayer. You hesitate, unsure of the proper way to enter, then carefully copy the movements of someone ahead of you. You bow, step inside and kneel, feeling the smooth stone beneath your knees. The silence is deep, broken only by soft murmurs and the faint crackle of burning incense. In this moment, the empire feels gentle, almost forgiving, but you know that even this peace is governed by strict, unspoken rules. When you leave the temple, the sky is painted with the colors of sunset. Lanterns begin to glow once more, and the city shifts into its evening rhythm. You walk slowly, letting the day's lessons settle into you. Every sound, every smell, every movement carries meaning here. There is no room for mindless wandering, no space for careless action. To last even one day in Imperial China is to be constantly awake, constantly learning, constantly adjusting. By the time you return to the inn, your body feels heavy, and your mind is full. You lie down on your mat, listening to the distant hum of the city, the soft splash of water in the canals, the muted voices drifting through thin walls. You think about the scholars, the soldiers, the farmers, the officials, the children, all moving through this intricate world with a fluency you can only envy. Sleep comes slowly, gently, like a tide rising around you, and as it does, you understand more deeply than ever why this place is so unforgiving and so endlessly fascinating to anyone who dares to step into it. The night stretches long and quiet, and when you wake again, it feels as though you have only just closed your eyes. The distant bells of a temple mark the hour, their low, resonant tones drifting through the thin walls of the inn. You lie still for a moment, listening, letting the sound settle into you. In Imperial China, even time announces itself with ceremony. There is no rushing it, no ignoring it. The bells are a reminder that the day has begun, whether you are ready or not. You rise and step outside into the cool air. The streets are calmer now, washed clean by yesterday's rain, their stones glistening faintly in the early light. Vendors are already setting up, their movements quiet and purposeful. A man carries baskets of vegetables balanced perfectly on a pole across his shoulders, walking as if he and the load are one. You try to imagine yourself doing the same and almost laugh, knowing how quickly you would lose balance. Here, even carrying something is a skill refined over years. You wander toward a busy intersection where several streets meet, and for a moment you simply stand and watch. Carts pass, animals are led through, people flow around each other in a complex, almost musical pattern. No one collides. No one shouts. Everyone seems to know exactly where to step and when. You try to move with them, but you hesitate, misjudging the rhythm, and have to quickly sidestep to avoid a passing cart. The driver doesn't stop, but the flicker of his eyes tells you he noticed. In this place, mistakes are seen even when they are not spoken. Later, you come across a group of elderly men playing a board game beneath a tree. Their faces are calm, their hands steady as they move small carved pieces across the board. You watch in silence, trying to understand the rules from observation alone. Every move is deliberate, every pause filled with meaning. One of the men glances up at you, his gaze kind but penetrating, as if he can see how lost you feel. You realize that in Imperial China, wisdom is not loud. It sits quietly, waiting for those who know how to look. As the day warms, you decide to walk along the outer walls of the city. They are massive, built from stone and earth, stretching farther than you can see. Soldiers patrol the top, their silhouettes moving slowly against the sky. You feel very small beneath them, a single fragile life in the shadow of an enormous empire. The walls are not just defenses. They are symbols of order, of the boundaries that keep everything in its place. To live here is to accept those boundaries, whether you understand them or not. Near the gates, a group of travelers waits to enter. Their clothes are dusty, their faces tired. Officials inspect their papers, asking questions, noting details. One man is turned away, his shoulders sagging as he steps back from the line. You don't know what he did wrong, only that something about him failed to meet the Empire's standards. Watching this, you feel a chill. Survival here is not only about what you do, but about what you are allowed to do. By afternoon, the city feels heavy with heat. You find shade beneath a tree in a quiet courtyard where a small fountain trickles softly. For a moment, you let yourself relax, but even here, you are careful not to sprawl or lean too casually. You have learned that posture matters. How you sit, how you stand, how you hold your hands, these are all silent statements about who you are. A young woman passes through the courtyard carrying a stack of folded cloth. She moves gracefully, her steps light, her eyes focused ahead. You try to imagine walking with that kind of ease, that kind of confidence. It seems to come from knowing exactly where you belong in the world. You, on the other hand, feel as though you are always just a little out of place, a half step behind the rhythm of everything around you. As evening approaches, the sky turns soft and pale, and the city begins to glow with lantern light once more. You walk through streets filled with gentle sounds, laughter from a tea house, the plucking of a stringed instrument, the distant call of a vendor closing for the night. There is beauty here, deep and quiet, but it is inseparable from the strictness of the world. The beauty exists because of the rules, because of the discipline, because of the endless attention to detail. You return to the inn as darkness settles in, your body tired but your mind still turning. You lie down, staring up at the low ceiling, listening to the faint noises of the city as it prepares for sleep. You think about everything you have seen and felt, how every moment here requires care, awareness, and humility. Imperial China does not allow you to drift. It demands that you be present, always. Slowly, gently, sleep takes you again, and as it does, you carry with you the quiet understanding that in this vast, intricate world, lasting even a single day is an achievement, one that rests not on strength or speed, but on patience, observation, and the willingness to learn from every small step. Hours of darkness drift by like a slow tide, and when you wake once more, the city is wrapped in a soft bluish dawn. The world feels hushed, as though it is holding its breath before the day truly begins. You sit up on your mat, listening to the faint sounds outside, the distant splash of water in the canal, the soft shuffle of footsteps, the low murmur of voices beginning to stir. Even waking up feels like a ritual here, something that must be done gently, respectfully, without disturbance. You step into the street and feel the cool stone beneath your feet. A light mist hangs in the air, blurring the edges of buildings and making everything look slightly unreal, like a painting still drying. Somewhere nearby, a kettle whistles, and the smell of hot tea drifts through the air. You follow it, drawn by a simple desire for warmth and comfort. At a small tea stall, an old woman pours steaming liquid into delicate cups. Her hands are steady, her movements slow and exact. You watch how she holds the kettle, how she tilts it just so, how she sets each cup down in the same place every time. When she hands you a cup, you bow slightly, hoping your gesture is correct. She nods, and you feel a small wave of relief. Even such a tiny moment feels like a test passed. As you sip the tea, you notice a group of men nearby discussing something in low, serious voices. You don't understand their words, but their expressions tell you enough. In Imperial China, conversations often carry layers of meaning beneath the surface. What is said is only part of what matters. How it is said, when it is said, and who is listening are just as important. You realize that simply speaking freely, as you might in your own world, would be dangerous here. You continue walking, letting the warmth of the tea spread through you. The city slowly comes alive around you. Doors open, shutters lift, and people emerge into the streets, each one moving with a sense of purpose. There is no wandering aimlessly here. Everyone seems to know where they are going and why. Near a small bridge, you see fishermen preparing their nets. They move quietly, communicating with nods and brief gestures. You watch, fascinated by how much they can say without words. When one of them notices you, he gives a small nod, not unfriendly, but cautious. You nod back, hoping you have mirrored his gesture correctly. In this place, even greetings are subtle, shaped by tradition and context. The day grows brighter, and you decide to walk beyond the bridge, where the city thins and the countryside begins. Fields stretch out, green and orderly, rows of crops planted with careful precision. Farmers work steadily, their movements synchronized with the rhythm of the land. You try to imagine spending a day doing this kind of labor, bending and lifting under the sun, knowing that your survival depends on each careful action. Here, even nature is something to be managed with respect and discipline. A breeze carries the scent of earth and growing plants, and for a moment, the world feels gentle. But you know that this gentleness is hard-won, the result of countless generations learning how to live in balance with their surroundings. To step into this world without that knowledge is to feel constantly off balance, always just one mistake away from trouble. As midday approaches, the sun climbs higher, and the heat begins to press down on everything. You find a shady spot beneath a tree and sit quietly, watching the clouds drift slowly across the sky. In this stillness, you think about all you have experienced, the markets, the officials, the temples, the farmers, the endless rules and rituals that shape every moment. It all feels overwhelming yet strangely beautiful. You realize that Imperial China is not simply harsh, it is precise. It asks for attention, respect, and patience in exchange for its order and harmony. Those who understand its rhythms can move through it with grace. Those who do not are constantly at risk of stumbling. As the afternoon light softens, you make your way back toward the city, feeling tired but also more aware. Each step, each glance, each breath is a small act of learning. And as the day slowly draws on, you understand more deeply why surviving even a single day in this vast, intricate empire is no small thing. It is a quiet, ongoing test, one that never truly ends, and one that you are only just beginning to understand. The sun begins its gentle descent, painting the sky with soft shades of gold and pale pink, and the long day in Imperial China slowly drifts toward evening once more. You walk through the streets with a little more confidence now, though you are keenly aware that confidence here must always be quiet, never loud or careless. The city hums with a low, steady rhythm, like a vast living creature settling into a different phase of its breath. You pass a row of small workshops where artisans are finishing their day's work. One carves intricate patterns into a piece of wood, another shapes clay on a spinning wheel, and a third carefully polishes a piece of jade until it glows softly in the fading light. Each of them moves with such precision that it almost looks like a dance. You stop to watch, captivated by how much skill is contained in something that looks so effortless. In this world, mastery is everything. Without it, even the simplest task becomes a struggle. Further down the street, you notice a group of apprentices bowing deeply to their master before closing up for the night. The respect in their movements is unmistakable. It is not forced. It is something they have learned from years of being part of this structured world. You try to imagine what it would be like to grow up here, to have these gestures and rules woven into you from childhood. Perhaps then it would not feel so exhausting, so demanding. But for you, every bow, every step, every pause still requires thought. As darkness begins to fall, lanterns are lit once again. their warm glow softening the edges of the buildings. The canals reflect the lights, turning the water into a ribbon of shimmering gold. You pause on a small bridge, watching the reflections ripple and shift. It is beautiful, almost hypnotic, and for a moment you forget how tired you are. A gentle breeze carries the distant sound of music, and you follow it to a small courtyard where a few people have gathered. Someone plays a stringed instrument, the notes drifting through the air like a quiet conversation. Others sit and listen, their faces calm, their eyes half closed. You sit at the edge of the group, careful not to intrude. In this simple moment, you feel a rare sense of belonging, even if it is only temporary. But even here you remain aware of the invisible rules. You do not clap or speak, because you have seen that this music is meant to be absorbed in silence. You simply listen, letting the sound wash over you, easing the tension that has built up throughout the day. When the music fades, people rise and bow lightly to one another before drifting away. You do the same, copying their movements, and this time it feels a little more natural. Perhaps you are learning slowly in tiny increments. You make your way back toward the inn, passing through streets that are now quieter, the shops closed, the crowds thinned. A few figures move in the shadows, carrying lanterns or leading animals home. The city feels different at night, softer, but also more mysterious, as though all its hidden stories are whispering just out of earshot. Back in your room, you lie down and let out a slow breath. Your body is tired, but it is the kind of tiredness that comes from constant awareness rather than physical strain. You think about how every moment here has required you to be present, to notice, to adjust. There is no room for autopilot in Imperial China. As sleep begins to claim you, you feel a strange mix of exhaustion and wonder. This world is demanding, yes, but it is also rich, layered, and deeply alive. And as your thoughts drift and blur, you understand more clearly than ever why lasting even a single day here is a quiet achievement, one earned not through force, but through patience, humility, and an endless willingness to learn. Sleep loosens its hold slowly, and when you wake again, the room is filled with a pale, silvery light. For a moment you are unsure where you are, then the faint sounds of the city's soft footsteps, distant voices, the gentle splash of water in the canals remind you that you are still within the vast breathing body of Imperial China. You sit up, rubbing your eyes, and feel the familiar mixture of curiosity and caution rise within you. Outside, the air is cool and fresh. A thin layer of mist drapes the streets, making lanterns glow like floating stars. You walk carefully, aware that the stones beneath your feet can be slick with moisture. Even a small slip here would draw attention, and attention is something you have learned to treat carefully. You wander toward a quieter part of the city, where narrow lanes twist between low houses. The smell of breakfast drifts through open windows, rice, warm bread, and something sweet you cannot quite identify. Families are beginning their day, moving with an ease that comes from long familiarity. You watch a father tie his child's shoes, a mother smooth her daughter's hair, all of it done with gentle precision. Even these small domestic moments seem guided by unspoken rules and traditions. A little further on, you come across a group of monks walking in single file, their robes brushing softly against the ground. Their faces are calm, their eyes lowered. You instinctively step aside, bowing slightly, and they pass without breaking their steady rhythm. There is something deeply soothing about their quiet discipline, a reminder that in this world, order is not just imposed from above, it is also chosen and practiced from within. As the day brightens, you find yourself near a small school where children are reciting lessons. Their voices rise and fall together, repeating lines of text with careful pronunciation. A teacher walks among them, correcting posture, adjusting a hand here, a tilt of the head there. You realize that even from a young age, people here are trained to move, speak, and think in certain ways. What feels exhausting to you is simply life to them. You continue on, feeling the steady hum of the city grow louder as more people emerge into the streets. Carts begin to roll, merchants call out their wares, and the air fills with movement and sound. Yet even in this busy chaos, there is an underlying order, a pattern that keeps everything from falling apart. At a small stall, you stop to buy a piece of fruit. You watch how the vendor handles it, how he weighs it in his hand, how he accepts your coins. You mirror his gestures as best you can, and for once, nothing feels awkward. It is a small victory, but it warms you nonetheless. As you eat, you walk slowly, letting your eyes take in the details you once would have missed. The carved beams above doorways, The faded paintings on old walls, the tiny shrines tucked into corners of courtyards. Each one tells a story, and together they form a tapestry of belief, tradition, and history that stretches back far beyond your own life. By midday, the sun is high and the city feels alive with energy. You find a place to sit near a canal and watch boats glide by, their reflections shimmering on the water. For a moment, everything feels peaceful. But even here, you know that the peace is held in place by countless rules, customs, and expectations. You take a deep breath and let it out slowly, feeling both tired and strangely calm. Imperial China is overwhelming, but it is also deeply absorbing. It demands your full attention, and in doing so, it leaves little room for the worries of any other world. As the day continues, you rise and move on, carrying with you the quiet understanding that every step here is part of a delicate dance, one that you are still learning, one that never truly ends, and one that makes surviving even a single day feel like a gentle, ongoing triumph. The afternoon drifts in with a warm, golden light, and the city seems to slow just a little, as if pausing to breathe. You walk along a shaded street where tall trees lean over tiled roofs, their leaves whispering softly in the breeze. The sound blends with the distant murmur of voices and the faint clatter of dishes from nearby homes, creating a gentle, almost soothing rhythm. You notice a group of elders sitting on low stools outside a small tea house. They sip quietly, occasionally exchanging a few words, their faces lined with years of living in this ordered world. You sit nearby, not too close, not too far, careful to respect their space. Even sitting is an act that feels guided by invisible lines, and you have learned to sense them. At least a little. A young server brings fresh tea to the elders, bowing slightly as he does. You watch his movements, how he places the cups, how he steps back without turning his back on them. It is all so subtle, yet so exact. You realize that much of what makes this society function is not written down in any book, but passed quietly from person to person, moment to moment. As you sip your own tea, you let your thoughts drift. You think about how different this life is from anything you have known. There is no room for rushing, no space for carelessness. Everything has its place and every place has its rules. At first, it felt suffocating, but now you begin to sense the strange comfort it offers. When everyone knows what is expected, the world feels steadier, more predictable, even if it is demanding. You finish your tea and thank the server with a small bow. He returns it, his expression polite and neutral. You stand and continue walking, passing through a narrow alley where sunlight filters down in thin beams. A cat slips past you, moving with effortless grace, as if it too understands the rhythm of this place. Farther on, you come to a small open space where a few people are practicing slow, flowing movements. Their arms rise and fall like waves, their steps measured and calm. You watch for a while, feeling your own breathing slow as you take in the scene. Even exercise here seems to be a form of meditation, a way to bring body and mind into harmony. As the day moves on, you feel a gentle weariness settle into your bones. It is not just physical tiredness, but the fatigue that comes from constant awareness. Every glance, every step, every word requires thought. And yet there is something quietly satisfying about it too. You are fully present in a way you rarely are in any other world. When the light begins to fade again, you make your way back toward the inn. The familiar streets feel a little less intimidating now, though you know they will never truly be simple. You pass the same shops, the same doorways, the same small shrines, and they seem almost to nod at you, as if acknowledging your slow, careful learning. Inside your room, you lie down once more, listening to the soft sounds of evening settling over the city. You feel tired, but in a gentle, peaceful way. And as sleep begins to draw you in, you carry with you the quiet understanding that in Imperial China, even the smallest moment is part of a vast, intricate pattern, one that you are slowly, patiently beginning to see. Night settles softly, like a silk blanket drawn over the city. From your small room you hear the faint, comforting sounds of Imperial China at rest. The low murmur of voices drifting through thin walls. The occasional creak of wood, the gentle lap of canal water against stone. The world does not fall silent here. It simply changes its tone, becoming slower, deeper, more inward. You drift in and out of sleep, and when you wake again, the lantern light from the street paints gentle patterns across the ceiling. For a moment, you simply lie there, breathing, feeling the steady rhythm of the place around you. Even rest feels structured here, as if the city itself is guiding you into stillness. When morning returns, it does so quietly. You step outside and feel the cool air against your skin. The streets are not yet crowded, and there is a rare sense of openness, as though the city is showing you a softer face. You walk slowly, savoring this brief calm. Near a small bridge, you see a man feeding fish in the canal. He tosses small bits of food into the water, and ripples spread outward, catching the light. You stop to watch, finding something deeply soothing in the simple act. In a world so full of rules and expectations, moments like this feel precious. As you continue on, you pass a small garden where flowers bloom in careful rows. A gardener kneels, trimming leaves with delicate precision. You watch how he chooses each cut, how nothing is wasted. Even beauty here is tended with discipline and care. Later, the city begins to wake in earnest. Voices rise, footsteps multiply, and the familiar hum returns. You walk among it, no longer quite as overwhelmed as before, though you remain aware of how much you still have to learn. You stop at a bakery, drawn by the smell of warm bread. The baker hands you a small roll, and you thank him with a practiced bow. It feels almost natural now, and that realization surprises you. Slowly, quietly, you are adapting. As you eat, you look around at the people passing by. Each of them moves through this intricate world with ease, guided by customs and habits formed over a lifetime. You too are beginning to feel the faint outlines of those patterns, though you know you will never truly belong here. The day stretches ahead, full of more small lessons, more careful steps, more moments of quiet wonder. And as you walk on, you carry with you the gentle understanding that in Imperial China, lasting even a single day is not about conquering anything. It is about listening, observing, and moving in harmony with a world that is both demanding and deeply, beautifully alive. The morning grows brighter, and the city settles into its steady rhythm once again. You walk through a district filled with the soft sounds of work beginning, wood being stacked, doors sliding open, the gentle clink of pottery being arranged. Each noise fits into the larger harmony of the place, like instruments tuning themselves before a long performance. You pose near a narrow canal where a woman is washing cloth. She dips the fabric into the water, lifts it, wrings it out, and repeats the motion with calm, unhurried precision. The water ripples outward, reflecting the sky in shifting patterns. You find yourself breathing more slowly just by watching her, as though her rhythm is quietly guiding your own. As you continue on, you notice small details that once escaped you, the way people avoid stepping on cracks between stones, the careful distance they keep from one another, the subtle nods exchanged between neighbors. None of it is random. It is all part of a silent agreement that keeps the city moving smoothly. You come across a small shrine tucked between two buildings. A few sticks of incense smolder in a shallow bowl, their smoke curling upward. You stop, unsure whether you should do anything, then simply bow your head slightly, copying what you have seen others do. It feels respectful, and somehow that is enough. Further down the street, children play a quiet game with pebbles, laughing softly but keeping their voices low. Even their joy seems shaped by the world around them. You watch for a moment, smiling, before moving on. By midday, the air is warm and full of light. You find a place to sit near a tree, its leaves providing a patch of shade. From here, you can see people passing by, merchants, workers, scholars, all moving with purpose. You feel a strange mix of exhaustion and peace. There is so much to notice, so much to absorb, and yet it all fits together in a way that feels strangely comforting. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the sounds of the city wash over you. When you open them again, you feel a little more grounded, a little more at ease. The afternoon stretches on, filled with small, quiet moments. The rustle of fabric, the soft clatter of dishes, the distant call of a vendor. You walk, observe, and learn, step by careful step. And as the sun slowly makes its way across the sky, you realize that surviving here is not about grand gestures or heroic acts. It is about these small, steady moments, about paying attention, showing respect, and moving gently through a world that asks for nothing less. The light begins to soften again, drifting from bright gold to a gentle amber, and the city eases into the slower pace of late afternoon. You walk along a familiar street, one you have passed through many times now. Yet it feels different every time, as though the city is quietly revealing new layers of itself when you are ready to see them. A group of shopkeepers are closing their doors for a short rest, rolling down wooden shutters and tying them carefully with cords. Each knot is neat, each movement precise. You pause to watch, noticing how nothing is rushed. Even when there is much to do, it is done calmly, with care. In Imperial China, haste feels almost out of place, like a wrong note in a long, steady song. You wander toward a small open square where a few people have gathered around a storyteller. He sits on a low stool, his voice gentle but expressive, weaving tales of ancient heroes and faraway lands. You cannot understand every word, but the tone is soothing, and the listeners' faces are attentive and calm. Stories here are not just entertainment. They are a way of passing down values, memories, and the quiet lessons of history. You sit at the edge of the group, letting the sound of his voice wash over you. For a while, you forget about the rules, the careful movements, the constant awareness. You simply listen, and in doing so, you feel a small, peaceful connection to the people around you. When the storyteller finishes, the listeners bow slightly in appreciation before drifting away. You do the same, feeling more comfortable with the gesture now. It is strange how quickly these small customs are becoming part of you, even though you still feel like a visitor in every other way. As evening approaches, the air grows cooler, and the city begins to glow once more with lantern light. You walk slowly, savoring the quiet beauty of it all, the reflections in the water, the soft light on tiled roofs, the gentle murmur of voices. Back at the inn, you settle into your room, feeling the day's gentle fatigue. You think about everything you have seen and learned, how each moment has required you to be present, to notice, to adapt. It is tiring, but it is also strangely fulfilling. As you lie down and let your eyes close, you feel the city breathing around you, steady and ancient. And in that soft, rhythmic presence, you drift once more into sleep, carrying with you the quiet understanding that in Imperial China, even the simplest day is a long, intricate journey, one that asks for patience, humility, and a willingness to listen. The night deepens and the city settles into a gentle hush, broken only by the occasional footstep or the distant call of a watchman. From your mat, you can hear the faint creak of wooden beams as the buildings slowly cool, and the soft rustle of fabric as someone in a nearby room turns in their sleep. These small sounds blend together into a kind of lullaby, reminding you that life here never truly stops, it only changes its pace. When you wake again, it is to the pale glow of early morning filtering through a papered window. You lie still for a moment, listening, feeling the quiet energy of the city as it prepares to wake. There is something peaceful about this hour, when everything is possible and nothing has yet begun. You step outside and breathe in the cool air. The streets are mostly empty and a thin layer of mist clings to the ground. You walk slowly, savoring the rare sense of space. A street sweeper moves ahead of you, his broom gliding over the stones in long, smooth strokes. You watch him for a while, noticing how even this simple task is done with care and pride. Further on, you come across a small bakery just opening for the day. Warm, comforting smells drift out as the baker slides fresh bread onto a wooden rack. You buy a small piece and thank him with a bow. He nods in return, and for a moment you feel almost like you belong here. As you eat, you sit on a low step and watch the city wake up. Doors open, people emerge, and the gentle hum of daily life begins to grow. It is a slow, steady process, like a great animal stretching after a long rest. You walk on, passing familiar landmarks, the small shrine, the narrow bridge, the shaded courtyard, and each one feels a little more like part of your own inner map now. You are still an outsider, but you are no longer completely lost. By midday, the sun is warm and the streets are lively again. You move among the people, careful but a little more confident, aware of the invisible lines that guide everyone's steps. You make fewer mistakes now, and when you do, you notice them more quickly. As the day unfolds, you realize that this world, so strict and demanding, is also quietly kind to those who try to understand it. It does not expect perfection from you, only attention. And so you continue step by step, breath by breath, living another gentle, challenging day in Imperial China, learning, adapting, and slowly discovering how even the most complex of worlds can feel a little more welcoming when you move through it with patience and care. The afternoon sun dips lower, casting long shadows across the narrow streets. Lanterns remain unlit for now, their red and gold paper glowing faintly in the light. You wander past familiar shops, past the same small shrine tucked between two buildings, past the canal where fish ripple beneath the surface. And you notice how much the city has begun to feel like a living, breathing organism rather than just a place. Every corner, every stone, every movement of people has its place, its rhythm, and you have begun to sense it. A soft breeze stirs the leaves of the trees overhead, carrying the faint scent of incense and freshly baked bread. You pause at a crossroads, watching a cart glide past, pulled by a single ox. The driver's movements are smooth, controlled, precise. You notice the way he shifts his weight, the way his hands hold the reins. In your own hesitation and awkwardness, you feel the difference between someone who has lived a lifetime in this world and someone who has just arrived. You continue toward the marketplace, now quieter than it was earlier, the day's business winding down. Merchants arrange the remaining goods neatly, preparing for the next day. Even in their small routines, there is a sense of ceremony. You pause to watch an older man fold silk with exacting care, the soft fabric sliding under his fingers like water. In Imperial China, even tasks that seem simple are acts of art, of discipline, of patience. From the corner of your eye, you notice a small group of children practicing calligraphy under a shaded veranda. They sit with their backs straight, brushes poised, repeating the same character over and over. A teacher hovers, correcting their posture, their strokes, their focus. You marvel at the quiet intensity of the scene. Even in play and learning, everything here is precise, deliberate, meaningful. As evening approaches, lanterns begin to glow along the streets, casting soft reflections on the water of the canals. You follow a quiet path toward a small bridge, pausing to watch a fisherman untangle his nets, the water around him still and reflective. The scene feels timeless, and you sense a rare calm in it, a gentle rhythm that contrasts with the constant awareness required to survive during the day. By the time you return to the inn, the city is fully illuminated by the warm, steady light of countless lanterns. Shadows dance along walls and rooftops, softening the sharp lines of buildings and streets. You enter your room, feeling the weight of another full day, not just on your body but on your mind. Every sense has been engaged, every action measured and considered. You lie down once more, listening to the soft hum of the city settling into night, the distant laughter of neighbors, the gentle clink of dishes, the whisper of wind through bamboo. And as sleep takes you, you feel the quiet realization that Imperial China is not merely a place to survive. It is a world to understand, a world that rewards patience, awareness, and careful attention to the smallest of details. Even a single day here is a journey into its rhythms, its beauty, and its quiet, demanding lessons.